say the dead don't speak, but what if they do? Welcome to Confessions from the Ghost Box, where the veil is thin, the static is alive, and real voices from the other side break through. I'm your host, Jason Balbuena, and on this channel we explore true paranormal investigations, spirit box sessions, EVPs, and interviews with guests who've come face to face with the unexplained.
So dim the lights, turn up your volume, and don't touch that dial. This is Confessions from the Ghost Box.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Confessions from the Ghost Box. Today we are going to dive into the history and the hauntings of what is known as Waverly Hills Sanatorium. So turn the lights out, put your headphones on, and let's begin. In the early 1900s, the city of Louisville was in crisis. Tuberculosis, known as the White Plague, was sweeping through the population at a time when there was no reliable cure. Patients often wasted away slowly, coughing blood and growing weaker by the day. Officials needed somewhere to isolate the sick, and fast. So in 1910, a small two-story hospital opened on a quiet, wooded hill. It was known as Waverly Hills. But by 1926, the modest hospital had been replaced by the massive 5-story Gothic structure that still stands today, capable of holding more than 400 patients at once. What began as a place of hope would soon become synonymous with death. So what was life inside Waverly like? Treatment for tuberculosis in the early 20th century was brutal. Doctors believed that fresh air and sunlight could help fight the disease. Patients were often rolled onto open-air porches, even in the freezing winter, and left there for months at a time. Other treatments were far more invasive. Some patients underwent surgeries to remove infected lung tissue, or had their lungs intentionally collapsed to rest them. Despite their efforts, people kept dying. How were people and the dead transported out of Waverly Hills to get to a burial spot? Well, with so many deaths, Waverly faced a grim logistical problem. Hospital officials didn't want patients to see bodies constantly being removed. It would destroy morale. So they built a 600-foot underground passageway that ran from the hospital down the hill to waiting vehicles. This became known as the body chute, or more ominously, the death tunnel. Estimates suggest that more than 6,000 people died at Waverly Hills during its years as a tuberculosis hospital, and according to legend, some of them never left. So what happened after tuberculosis? Well, by the 1940s and 50s, antibiotics finally brought tuberculosis under control. In 1961, Waverly Hills closed its doors as a tuberculosis hospital. But in 1962, the building reopened as Woodhaven Medical Services, a geriatric care facility. Reports of overcrowding and neglect eventually led to its permanent closure in the 1980s. What remained was an enormous, decaying hospital, sitting silent on the hill. And that's when the ghost stories truly exploded. Throughout the 1980s and the 90s, trespassers and thrill seekers began sneaking into the abandoned building. Many came out with stories they couldn't explain. Visitors and investigators have reported doors slamming on their own, shadow figures in empty hallways, disembodied voices, and cold spots that move. So let's talk about some of the most famous spirits that are said to roam the halls of Waverly Hills. We have Timmy, who is known as the Ghost Child. He is one of the most beloved and eerie legends is that of Timmy. Witnesses claim the spirit of a young boy likes to play in the hallways. Paranormal investigators say if you roll a ball down the corridor, it sometimes rolls back at you. Some visitors also report seeing a little girl running through the third floor. Considering Waverly had a children's ward, this story hits a little harder. There was also another one. This is room 502. No location inside Waverly is more famous than room 502. Legend says a nurse working there became pregnant out of wedlock and hanged herself inside the room. Another story claims a different nurse later jumped from the roof in 1932. Visitors today report dark figures near the doorway, feelings of intense dread, and shadowy shapes that move along the walls. Whether the stories are fact or folklore, room 502 remains the epicenter of Waverly Hills' paranormal reputation. Now, in 2001, the property was purchased by new owners who began restoring the building and offering guided tours. Now, since then, Waverly Hills has been featured on numerous paranormal television shows and has drawn investigators from across the country. And just some of those that the Waverly Hills has been included on has been, of course, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, of course, and also Project Fear, just to name a few. Some leave convinced that the place is genuinely haunted. Others say the atmosphere and history create the perfect recipe for imagination to run wild. So what's really going on? Skeptics point out that old buildings make noise, temperature shifts create cold spots, dust can look like orbs, and the power of suggestion is extremely strong in places with dark histories. But believers counter with one simple argument. Why do so many people report the same experiences independently? The truth may lie somewhere in between that. We are on the cusp of finding that out. That is why we as paranormal investigators do what we do, to bring you proof, to bring you evidence, and to try to figure out why these spirits are still here. But today, Waverly Hill still stands, massive, silent, and watching. It has seen a deadly epidemic, experimental medicine, thousands of deaths, years of abandonment, and decades of ghost stories. Whether you believe in spirits or not, one thing is certain. Places that witness that much suffering rarely feel empty. Would you spend the night inside Waverly Hills? Until next time, sleep carefully, and thank you for tuning in to Confessions from the Ghost Box.
If you felt that static shift, you weren't imagining it. Thank you for listening to Confessions from the Ghost Box. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share so you never miss a new investigation, guest interview, or message from beyond the veil. Leave a comment below and tell us what you heard, because sometimes the spirits respond when you listen twice. I'm Jason Balbuena, and until next time, keep your signal open.